So I'd like to express a really warm welcome to all of you, our panelists today, for this specific panel, which is covering diversity as a driver for innovation in the fintech space. Specifically, a warm welcome to Lucy Gazmararian from the Crypto and Fintech Advisory for PwC in Hong Kong. Also, Teana Baker-Taylor, who's the Managing Director of Crypto.com. And we also have Samantha Seaton, who's the CEO of Moneyhub, and Felicia Meyerwitz-Singh, who's the co-founder and CEO of Akoni. So maybe before we get going, we could just have a quick maybe intro about you, about your company, about your passions with regards to what you're doing. I know we have some ladies who are representing open banking, also the blockchain space, which are, constantly moving and generating a lot of influence in the fintech space. So if you can just maybe give me a bit of a background about yourselves and also for the audience. Maybe we can start with you, Felicia.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Great to be here and in such good company. I'm Felicia, as Sarah mentioned, CEO of Akoni. And Akoni is a fintech specializing in cash management. We're a cash marketplace that increases returns on cash by moving money automatically between different savings products. We're an API first company and we primarily partner with advisors and wealth platforms, private banks, and so on. And I am very passionate about diversity. I'm very involved along with Sam in an organization called Open 51, which is about promoting senior women as thought leaders, particularly in fintech and financial services, who utilize various forms of open data and open finance. And also myself and another friend, we support other female founders through an organization called Hive Founders, very early stage founders sharing knowledge. And I genuinely believe that diversity increases returns and is very important in terms of promoting business and for growth generally of economies globally, not just in the UK.
Okay, thank you very much. And on to you, Lucy.
Yeah, great. Thank you, everyone, for having me. So I am with PwC's crypto team based in Hong Kong. We've been now growing rapidly in the last 3 years, servicing any number of crypto companies, so crypto exchanges, crypto funds, more and more traditional financial institutions moving into the crypto space. And actually, over the years, we've done a lot of work with regulators and governments when they're sort of coming up with their crypto asset policies, and we're trying to navigate the regulations. So obviously, we sit between the private sector and governments and regulators. So it's been incredible 3 years watching the space completely transform. A little bit about myself. My background was actually in traditional finance. So I come from sort of the asset management background, so Goldman Sachs, Credit Suisse, and then saw the light when I sort of came across crypto and digital assets about 3 years ago. When it comes to diversity, I'm also very passionate about it. I've been lucky enough to have organizations that are very sort of supportive, I think, of making sure the gender balance is right. Goldman Sachs was actually an excellent company for that, I have to say. And we can come on to their latest initiative about women on boards. And I've also started Women in Crypto in Hong Kong, and we went with a really obvious name because we wanted to sort of attract everyone and make sure there was a platform for us all to communicate and just have a voice, right? Because so many people say there's no women in crypto. So we wanted to dispel that myth and get us all together in Asia specifically. So that's a little bit about myself.
Very nice. And on to you, Teana.
Thanks for having me. I'm Teana Baker-Taylor, and I am the Managing Director of the UK for Crypto.com, which is a blend of a couple of different types of crypto asset services, all offered in one very well packaged and frictionless app. Our mission is to hopefully put crypto assets in everyone's wallet. And I have been in the crypto space for about 3.5 years as well. So similar to Lucy, I come from traditional finance. I was with HSBC before joining the crypto space in cash management. The whole idea of moving cash around, payments, liquidity, all of those things are very similar, obviously, in the crypto asset space, but with a different type of non-correlated asset class, if you will. So the focus, I think, on diversity, especially in the crypto and blockchain space, has been really interesting in that it's a relatively new space. And so when you look at fintech and finance, having been in both of those industries for a number of years, one of the things I think has been really positive in the crypto and blockchain space is that because it's completely nascent, everyone's new. So it really is an equal opportunity for anyone and everyone to get involved because no one's been around for very long. So I do think that we have seen a little bit more gender balance, and certainly because it's such an entrepreneurial space, anybody can have a great idea and start something up. There's still issues that we have around funding and getting money and VC engagement and those types of things that we see in other areas of finance and tech specifically. And equally, I think we're still in that precipice of math isn't for girls or science isn't for girls, coding isn't for girls. And so, being able to kind of really grow that deep bench of up and coming women to enter into the space is really important to me, so that they are ready to join the crypto and blockchain space should they wish to later on.
Great. And on to you, Sam.
Hello, and I'm so pleased to be here with Teana and Lucy and Felicia. I mean, it's very exciting, so thank you very much. Moneyhub is all about enhancing the lifetime financial wellness of people, their communities and their businesses. And I know lots of companies say that they have a mission in life, but we really do eat our own lunch. We live and breathe Moneyhub, so I'm very biased. I have to put my hand up now. But the reason I'm passionate about it is because I believe in transparency for people's money. I mean, we just have no idea how financial services works as consumers. So although we're a B2B business, API or white label, it's all about enabling businesses to help their current customer base in a way that's not been possible prior to open banking and the new legislation around open finance. So that's our sweet spot, and that's what we do for a living. But genuinely, I really feel very strongly about helping consumers be better off, like making more informed decisions, know where their money is, what it's doing, how it's working, effortlessly, like no hard work. I have an analogy about, I love driving cars. I've always enjoyed driving a car. But if you had made me take the engine apart and put it back together in order to get my license, I'd still be on the bus. Which is ridiculous, right? And it's not that I can't take an engine apart and put it back together. I'm sure if you made me, I could do it. But I don't want to. I've got no interest in that. So that's what it feels like for me, for consumers in financial services. They have to work too hard in order to achieve, something as simple as being able to drive a car. So anyway, that's where I'm at, and I'm genuinely a huge advocate of embracing all things, crypto as well, because it's a massive part of where the world is heading. And I just think that, how do I put it? We're just not getting enough airtime about what's coming rather than what we've seen in the past. So I'm a really big believer in trying to elevate what's coming rather than talking about what's been. And the other big thing to Fee's point is really I really care a lot about trying to make a more diverse society at all levels and in all aspects. I can influence that more in the money side of the world, the financial services side of the world. And the reason for that is because I just think women just don't seem to get a fair run at this. I mean, from my participation in the pensions dashboard, which I feel very strongly about because of the way society operates, women end up with less money in their pension when they retire and yet live longer. I mean, how does that work? I mean, it just makes no sense whatsoever. So we've got to address that. So I'm a big advocate of sorting that out, and will do anything I can to help. And then on top of that, the fact that even with my own business, I see the natural uptake to money management services, apps, advice, I mean, you name it, 70 to 80% men. It's like, that is not right. So I've got to do my bit to address that, because as Fee says, we're members of Open 51, and that's because 51% of the population are women.
Very good point. Very good point. All right. Well, I'm really excited to get the conversation going with you ladies. And it's great to hear, obviously, how you're all so passionate, and in each of your own spaces and geographical regions of the world, you're doing great steps forward, obviously, for women in tech. And it's really a comforting thing to hear from here, a tiny island in Cyprus. So without further ado, obviously the topic of diversity is, I mentioned in one of my posts for LinkedIn, that it's a bit of a hot topic. It's like a hot potato. Some people like to talk about it and just pass it on, or, you know, just kind of briefly brush over it, but then don't really go deep into the crux of the matter. So I would really like to take a few moments to really understand and highlight the importance of representative data. Obviously, with Open 51, you guys have some really great statistics. So I think at some point it would be really nice to hear what we're talking about when we talk about data, and what are the numbers actually saying right now. And then how we can also all play a role in facing current challenges moving forward. Because obviously, as mentioned by Sam, if we don't make changes right now, then the future might have a very different outlook for many of the women entering into the workforce, women starting out in university and STEM studies, etc. So how we can all really kind of pave the way and open a few doors, even opening it a bit so that it can be widely swung later. So one of the first things I wanted to actually discuss was with regards to the financial services sector, and how we're still struggling to fully embrace diversity on multiple fronts. And in a world where data is key, and where blockchain, you mentioned a little bit earlier, Lucy, how it's salient data, so it's very clean and everybody is anonymous, and we should all be able to access this space. What are some of the current limitations that we might be facing, and how can we truly deliver these kind of open finance solutions? And maybe we can start off with hearing a bit about the data, what you guys are seeing from your standpoints in your various sectors. Maybe if we could start with Felicia on numbers. Can't hear? There we go.
So in terms of numbers, if we start globally, which the data is pretty appalling, it's something like 2 billion people don't have bank accounts, of which most of those are women. And most men, I think the statistic is something like 70-something% of men have an account versus early 60% of women. So when we look at a country like the UK or wherever we're all mainly sitting, you forget how politics can affect the fact that women don't have bank accounts. So in countries where women have very little rights, or there's a huge amount of prejudice or subjugation, or laws preventing women from doing things without men, obviously far fewer women will have any sort of participation in the banking and financial system. And that, in particular, hurts women and minorities in very vulnerable sectors. So already you have, a lack of empowerment, and it's made worse, by the cultural situation. So for me, that role in broader society makes us key as women to the growth. And so we have to find a new way, both within countries like the UK, where it's quite sophisticated, the market already, where women do have equal rights, as well as in emerging markets where those rights don't exist. And I just want to say that, gender equality is one of those 17 UN goals for creating a sustainable future. So theoretically, whatever we do in the financial services sector should feed into making the world a better place.
Very good. And on Lucy, maybe from the groups that you have started out in Hong Kong, what is the general feeling right now with those that you speak with when it comes to the crypto space, the accessibility inside of the workforce, etc.?
You know, it was interesting for me to start this because I can see so many sides of this. Some people are really anti-segregating a women's group, right, and calling it a women's group, and I get that, and I get the arguments for that. And a lot of men, it's surprising, in the space that view themselves as super supportive of male allies are like, why do you need to start a women in crypto group? Like, well, I'm fine with women, I'm cool with women, like, what's the problem? And it's like, well, there is a problem because you've got no female customers and you've got no female staff. So sorry, but I see what you're saying, because it's they don't even realize that there's sort of an issue. And that's good. On the one hand, it's positive because actually there's no real issue. Maybe we need to club together and do a better job of sort of raising it in the right way as an issue. So I started Women in Crypto just to bring, you know, shine the spotlight that actually there is a discussion to be had, and it's a very constructive one, but there certainly is a need for sort of more encouragement of the female side of things. In terms of the members, a lot of them are quite a bit younger than me. I've gone through, you know, battered and bruised from Goldman and Credit Suisse. You know, I've gone through the sort of difficult finance route in London, actually. But a lot of them are starting out, and now crypto is its own industry, right? So when I started out, I was like, oh, I join a bank or I become a lawyer, and now they're going, wow, I'm going into crypto, and I'm really so envious of the new youth, right? Because it's so exciting. It's an entirely new asset class. And as Teana said earlier, it's just like we're rewriting the rules, right? We're actually sort of also being empowered more than ever with crypto. So it's so exciting, and for that reason, it's even more important that women feel that they are part of this new emerging story, because actually they're going to benefit from the financial inclusion aspect, from the tokenization aspect, which I could honestly, I want to be careful because I'll end up talking for the entire panel on this. But in terms of actual feedback from the younger ones, they say, look, I've just come out of university, I'll sit in a meeting room where it's quite a complex topic anyway, and it's all men, and they feel petrified. I mean, literally petrified. They say, I feel I can't express my views. If I don't understand something, I'm not really comfortable saying it. And it's just, and so the Women in Crypto group is another forum just to sort of sometimes just share some viewpoints, and just by saying that they felt that way, you know, then there's feedback from the group, and then maybe we speak to the guys, and you know, everyone, it's just a communication issue sometimes, right? It's just because you don't think there's a problem, it doesn't mean that a problem doesn't exist on some level. So I think it can be really constructive, and you know, it's just another network where people can find something in common, and we can come together to find ways to sort of alleviate some of the issues. So I mean, my members, unless they're telling me something different, actually find it very helpful from that perspective, right? And I'll also say the last thing with crypto companies is the smaller ones, you know, they're like any startups. So many companies in the crypto space are just bootstrapped, right? They're just beginning. It's the founders that have come together. Everyone's doing a million different roles. And so often you'll just have one female, right? And I'm a big believer in the power of at least more than one token female on your staff, right? Like I think it's important to have more than one female board member. I mean, even myself, I feel if I'm on my own in a situation as a female, it's just different when there's another female there that you get on with, and there's strength in more than one person, right? That token hire. So again, I think there's some work to be done around that, and the psychology of it actually. Yeah. But those are some of my observations from over here in Asia.
Sam, do you have any thoughts on that?
Actually, I really would embrace what Lucy's just said about having more than one female. I know that sounds like ambitious because we're struggling to get sometimes one, but I do think we need to set the bar a bit higher. The benefit for me has been even obvious on my own board. So I think I'm speaking from a direct experience. So my CFO is female and I'm female, my CTO is male and my COO is male. So, and a lot of my support for the business is male because the support network is a traditional older network, and you know, and whether we like it or not, there's way more men than women. So, you know, although I have drawn on, you know, so my advisory board is 2 women, you know, out of 6, because it's just difficult to get the kind of level of input and experience that you need to get a small business off the ground and up and running. But on my board, having, as Lucy said, the equal split, you know, in terms of thing, is amazing. And it's not because Amanda's female, our CFO, it's because she absolutely brings a slightly different mode of operation to the board, which is exactly what diversity is all about. so that you then get a better outcome. And I just think it was, very obvious for me, with that coming to play. So when Lucy said about more than one female, I was thinking to myself, absolutely. And so I think I can put my hand up and say, that is, it's proof. Proof is in the pudding, and it's there, and I think we shouldn't shy away from it. I guess the question I've got is, and I guess for Teana and Lucy, it's even harder than it is for me. How do you achieve that? Because I feel that we've come a long way in some aspects, and we've gone nowhere in other aspects. And I just find that a little bit daunting. Maybe it's something we could talk about a little bit more about. So it's great, where you can make those great strides forward, but how do we maybe make that happen a little quicker?
Teana, I think you mentioned a bit earlier when you were introducing yourself on the crypto scene about how there's so many startups in blockchain and crypto, and the space itself is still, like you mentioned, quite young. So you have so much more opportunity to actually make the right steps forward. But I would like to also understand, with the goal that we all have of achieving, this more diverse workforce, truly representative data. How do we do that on the blockchain, and then hopefully that can also maybe influence traditional financial services in a way as well, because these traditional financial services are now needing to keep up with the strides that the crypto space and blockchain are really putting out there. So maybe if you can give us a bit of insights on your side, what is the current situation that you see from your perspective on blockchain and crypto?
Well, I think there's kind of two sides to the coin. There are the teams that are running the projects and the innovators that are starting these new companies, new ways of offering investment and financial services participation to consumers. And then there's the consumers, right? So both sides of that coin make the ecosystem, and for an ecosystem to be balanced, you need kind of active and equal participation from both sides. So from a customer standpoint, one of the things that is misleading is that women aren't investing in crypto, and that crypto isn't interesting to women. Mm-hmm. And as Lucy was saying, you can go to crypto meetups, and they will predominantly be men. But again, these events are designed by men for men. So there's a lot of pizza, there's a lot of beer. Some, more often than not, they're held in bars. And so it's not necessarily the way that women might choose to engage with their peers and learn more. So, the way that we socialize, and these are social networking events, are different. And so, I have said in the past, and I have tried to put in place within my own business, different ways to engage, much the same way as we do in traditional finance. So for example, I might have 3 types of customers within my customer base. I might have a cohort of people that have children. I might have a cohort of people that are, single men. I might have a cohort of people that are like, young professionals in their, 30s and 40s. If I'm trying to do corporate entertainment for these clients, I'm going to offer very different things to different people. So for example, with the children, I might do something around, a movie night with their children, where they can bring their families, or, a family fun day. For the professionals with wives, if I really want to get my client there, something like a Chelsea flower show where they can bring the wife, it's probably more likely that the guy is going to come. So it just depends on catering the message to your audience, and crypto hasn't quite got there yet. And so I think it is misleading that the women aren't participating, but they are. So we've had a couple studies come out in the last 6 to 12 months. One of them was quite interesting, from Grayscale, which runs a Bitcoin fund, quite a large one. And they saw a 13% increase over the last year from investors that are women, and 43% of their investors across the board, across their fund, are women. So that was very surprising to people. And I think they thought, oh, well, we didn't realize women were really participating. Another survey conducted by Cointelegraph, which is, an industry, trade publication, surveyed the majority of crypto exchanges and found that their female users had grown between 22 and 160%, which is massive. So why do we have this information asymmetry? And I think it's because of, again, the way we communicate and the way we engage. So if you're going to fill a room and do pizza and beer, chances are you're not necessarily going to have your complete customer base there, because it might not be the type of environment that women prefer to socialize in. So I think that's one thing. Then from the team side, I think that there's a two-pronged approach. So going back to more than one woman in the room. Most of my career, I have been either the only senior female leader in the room or the only woman on the team. So I've gone through my whole career that way. I'm also one of 5 children, 4 of which are male. So for me, I think I didn't notice. Yeah, I was quite used to it, right? But now I think there's a number of things that we can do as the senior women. So, Lucy and I, as we're, in these rooms with these younger women and trying to figure out, how to help them position themselves, I think 2 things are really important. It's up to us, the senior women, to take a stand. So I won't speak on panels where I'm the mommy moderator and I've got a panel of men. I just won't do it anymore. I won't do events that don't at least attempt to have some kind of gender parity, so that they're bringing more women into the space. And I'm a little bit older now and I get to choose those things. The other thing that's really important for me now as a senior leader is I won't go to a company that doesn't have at least 2 senior female leaders in the management team, because I don't want to be that token female. Mm-hmm. And for firms that come to me for advice or guidance, and I'm sure this happens to Lucy quite a lot, it's one of the top things that I say, look, the balance of perception and opinion is skewed if you only have one gender in the room. And if you are trying to attract 50% of the population to your platform or to your service, you're going to have a harder time doing that if you don't have someone that can communicate them in a way that they feel heard, right? So you're leaving a lot of money on the table if you don't have some gender parity within your team. And then I think the last thing on the team front, I would say is, again, echoing what Lucy said, women are less likely to put themselves forward or to speak up. And I think it's just, part of our gender makeup, part of our nature. But I think really teaching the younger women that are coming up that their opinion is valid, that the perception may be different, and it's okay to be the one voice in the room that's different from everybody else. And I often find that I am, but often that's a good thing because I see things slightly differently. And as long as I can, position my opinion with fact, and have some anecdotal evidence to support myself, oftentimes my opinion is considered, because it is a blind spot that the team might not have seen before. So, I think that teaching younger women to speak up is important, but also teaching them that when they do, they need to be able to defend their position. Having an opinion is not enough.
Very good points. I think on this note, when it comes to women who are perhaps leading startups or entrepreneurs or people who are really trying to get there, to make something for themselves, and bring their businesses forward, when it comes to getting VCs to interact with them, is there any kind of advice that you might be able to give along lines of having an opinion and being able to back it up with, factual evidence or historical data that might impact those opinions? There's significant data that indicates that although the profit share of these, let's say all women startups, or that they do have gender parity on their boards, that they don't actually get the seed funding, or they're just not able to crack the ceiling. What would you say might be some of the challenges that they're facing? How can they overstep that? Maybe Samantha, if you have any feedback on that, or Felicia.
Well,
Yeah, yeah. Sam and I'm sure I've lost it. You go ahead.
Well, I'll
Sam.
start, and then I'll start, and then Fee can take it to another level. But I've got two things. Well, it's just that there's two things I'd say about that, which is that one, I think the seed funding is getting better.
Okay.
So I do think that is. I'm not saying it's great, but it is better. But the thing that upsets me about it is there's still this terrible unconscious bias there. So to give you an example, a business that a lady started in Bristol called Girls. Sorry, we've just got a phone going. Sorry, called Girls That Run. She got seed funding for that business, and yet another lady didn't get seed funding for a crypto business that she wanted to start. And I think that's unconscious bias. So they all got behind the girl that can run, and they can see that she's going to pull that off. It's a great idea. Let's fund her. You know, the lady that's wanting to get her crypto business off the ground. A, they maybe don't understand crypto. B, they don't think she's going to manage to do that. And so there's a loss of, you know, kind of investment faith, if you want to call it that. So I guess, so I think that's one thing. So I think if you've got an idea that this is going to sound terrible, but it's the truth, that is stereotypical, I think you can get funding for it now. If you've got an idea that is still not a natural fit for what is perceived to be a woman's role in the world, I think you'll still find it very difficult and much harder than what your equal counterpart that could be a man would find. And then I think it actually gets worse after that. So I think the seed world is good. I think funding, you know, from the VC world in Series A, B, and C, I think it just is an uphill battle, and we are starting to see, what is it? Someone said the green shoots. Was it the green shoots of grass? It is literally that, because you know, I've been in that world, you know, for probably 2 years now, and all the things that you read, unfortunately, I'd love to say it's not true, but it is true. So, you know, where they will turn a conversation to being, you know, about, you know, how are you going to generate revenue, rather than like looking at your vision. Whereas the exact same conversation with a man will be not so much about the revenue, but about the vision. So all those things you read, I have experienced directly. And everyone says, okay, well, that means I have to be better and I have to be able to turn the conversation, all that. Well, great, but, you know, I am not a magician. I'm still human, you know. So I would argue that it's still, you know, desperately pretty tough out there for funding generally. But there you go. I'll hand over to Fee, who's got more important view on this.
Thanks, Sam. I mean, I think the situation is terrible. Currently in the UK, it's something like 3% of venture funds go to female-founded businesses, but all the statistics say, you know, companies with a female founder perform 60% better with investments than all male-founded teams. They return a greater return in terms of a higher IRR, internal rate of return, 112% versus 48%. Those are US statistics, but it is the most, you know, researched market, so I think they still hold. They foster routes to exits and the number of exits and so on. However, despite all of this, you still have a situation where everything has either stalled or going backwards, particularly in, you know, the post-COVID world, where everyone has withdrawn into, you know, networks that they know and so on. And because most investment is done by men or by a very, you know, male framework, you kind of still see most investments going into male-founded businesses. And I just want to say that for me, it's not actually a male-female issue. It's totally societally driven. And the concern that I have is that this is not going to change using the same ways that we've always done, you know, with the kind of groups that we have supporting it, with people, a lot of talking shops, particularly from large banks and venture capital firms, about investing in women, but very little money going into it. So I think that, and I mean, I'm just talking about female founders. It's much worse if you're a black female founder, say, anyone who's not white. So, then the statistics are just appalling. So you can clearly see that there's whether it's an unconscious bias, a societal bias, and I believe that likely is some sort of intervention, political intervention is needed for real change. And even the amount of money that's been spent on things like the Rose Review in the UK, which was very interesting, that could have gone into investing in a number of early stage female founded businesses. So, or businesses founded by minorities. So I feel very strongly, and this wasn't always my view, I was very pro meritocracy. I think that if we look at everything that has been done over the last 5-10 years, the needle has hardly moved in any respect relating to any sort of gender or diversity initiative. And we are kidding ourselves that if we think that we can carry on doing the same thing and get a better result, then I think it's just nuts. And for me, the only real change can come from some sort of policy, political intervention, because obviously the issue is much more complex than, any of us realize.
The one thing I would say that is ironic in all of this is that because of how hard it is for female founders or female-run businesses to get, kind of equal rights in terms of capital, access to capital, it actually has an effect that the businesses that women do run, almost by definition, are better. So this is the bit that I don't understand why VCs aren't piling in, because actually to me it's almost like when you have value funds and they're undervalued stock, and you've got a fund manager that actually does that for a living, right? They look at undervalued stock and that's how they their investment mandate. But I'm a bit like, there's a huge group out there that actually you could make a lot of money from more easily than others, because just by them being women, because by definition you have to work harder, make every pound go further. You've got to get your world around you to be all fired up on a lot less than anything else. Right from everything, from your marketing to so everything has to be done kind of harder and deeper and digging deeper than other businesses, because you don't have the capital. And so the irony that I think is, for me, is that if I was in the VC world, I'd be piling money into these businesses, because I'm thinking I can't lose compared to a male-dominated business, because I know for a fact this business over here is having to work probably 10 times harder, and they're doing it and holding level. So it's like, wow, so let's give them a bit more injection and let's see them fly, right? But that isn't happening.
I have a slightly different view on the working harder or performing better. I agree that the statistics show us that women-run businesses or businesses that have a very close to equal gender balance perform better, and we can it's pretty easy to surmise that this is because there's a number of different viewpoints and decision-making styles going into those businesses. And I do think women do work harder, but I also have this a tiny bit of an issue around this, and Sam and Felicia, this is not what I'm saying you're saying, but there is this societal systemic value around, I call it work porn. Like, I work so hard and I'm constantly working, and, I'm totally love what I'm doing and I'm 100% dedicated to it, and I don't have any hobbies. All I do is work. And I don't think that's good for us, right? And I have worked that way for a vast majority of my career. And I don't think it's healthy long-term. I don't think it's sustainable. What I wanted to address was the unconscious bias piece that comes up. So very quickly, orchestras a few years ago, 10, 15 years ago, realized that their orchestra complement was very, very male. And they wanted to do something about it, to address it, to have more gender parity. And the New York Orchestra went through a number of steps to try and remove that bias. And they did all this extra stuff, and still they removed, names from CVs, and they did blind auditions, and still the number held. It was very male. And they couldn't figure out why this was happening, because they could all agree in their heads that it just wasn't mathematically possible that men were just, you know, sufficiently more talented at playing the violin, right? So what was it? And it turned out it was shoes. So when, even in a blind interview, when a candidate would walk onto the stage, they could hear their shoes. So they put down rugs, so they couldn't hear the footsteps. And then the candidate really was blind to them. And the number of women increased significantly. So that's really a demonstration of unconscious bias. Like you're driven to have gender parity, and yet it's still skewed. Why is it still skewed? And to have enough integrity to continue to try and solve that problem, I thought was really fascinating with orchestras. So I think if we know this conscious bias exists, we can continue to work hard and perform better and have it be ignored like it is today, or we can acknowledge that this unconscious bias exists and try and put measures in place that reduce the ability to actually identify the gender of the applicant or the gender of the business holder that's seeking. There's got to be some ways that we can put a rug down, you know, to use the same analogy that the orchestras did, to try and level the playing field, because I don't think it's anyone's intention systemically to be excluding women, certainly not today, but it's still happening. And I don't think it's necessarily anybody's fault.
Lucy, on your side, on the discussions of, you know, that we've raised a few things here. So we have the unconscious bias and the conscious bias, obviously, that is obviously something that's happening. There's also, we briefly mentioned policy change and whether that's something that needs to happen or doesn't need to happen. What are your thoughts on those points?
Yeah, I mean, I want to normalize this, right? To sort of take it out of a discussion point so that it doesn't become male-female, doesn't become a discussion point. And I mean, this is going back a long time, but it took me back to you know, even school days, right? I happened to go to a school where that was not, even though it was actually, now I look back, it was incredibly feminist school, right? Because it was all about, back then, getting women into really senior positions. And we were surrounded by, you know, our music hall, our theatre, they were all sponsored by people, women scientists, you know, people that had changed the world in male-dominated fields. And it's only now that I realize that that was all seeped into me from the age of 11 through to 18. Mm-hmm. And it happens to be a school which actually then churns out a lot of very powerful women in the UK. But they didn't make it about women versus men. There was actually the men's school. It was just, we simply it was normalized in our minds that those were goals, society was open, opportunities were there, and if you work hard and you know, put in the time and effort, then you're going to achieve it. So it's that kind of culture that I would like for us all to sort of adopt, that it's not whether you're male or female, it's just hard work and determination, right? Mm-hmm. But when I say normalizing it, it was important, I think, when I look back, that I had all those subconscious strong females surrounding me, right, without even realizing. And that's what I think we also need to do in the workplace. And that's why it's so important that there is more than one woman there, that someone who's strong in a room is another woman, because then the new generation of younger women, it's normal for them to aspire to be in that position, and so the virtuous circle continues, right? So I think we're sort of, it's negative, you know, unconscious bias now, simply because that's what we're sort of accepting. So I would love to just make the environment, you know, whether we have to enforce it in the short term in order to get to a position where we don't have to talk about it anymore, that maybe that's what we need to do as an interim step. I mean, I think one of my favorite moves by a company recently is Goldman Sachs. They just this summer said that they will not take a company public if it doesn't have at least one diverse board member. So at that point, you're really putting money on the line, right? If you're a business and you've been building this business and you're going for your IPO, you know, 10 years of work, and an investment bank like Goldman Sachs is not going to take you public unless you display diversity. I mean, they're saying one diverse board member, but I think now as we're looking more and more at ESG and just corporate governance generally, and what's the sort of gender balance that we're sort of putting in on the regulations in terms of what you need to fulfill in order to go public as a company. I think that's a that's an interesting way of doing it, because there's no way everyone's going to sit up straighter and take it more seriously than when money is attached to forcing change, right? So, you know, I don't like the idea necessarily of prescribing that, but I support it in the short term to get to a position where we don't have to talk about it, and there are positive female role models, there are positive male role models, and, you know, we all bring something to the table. And in many actually diverse aspects, so not just male, female, but different religions, race, whatever, you name it. So yeah, and actually, I mean, to bring it back to crypto, it's interesting, right? Because it's quite an anonymous world where you actually don't know who's part of these decentralized systems, right? Who's contributing to the code. Suddenly we're decentralizing the way that a particular network functions. And you don't necessarily have to tell anyone you're a female or a male, right? So you're just this anonymous user. So I think this is really interesting. And Teana, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any research has actually been done into, I mean, we barely know who the actual KYC, you know, who is actually behind it. So I don't think we've got to the step where we're like, who's female, who's male? But you know, it's really interesting. Let's see, you know, if a woman doesn't have to have a voice by sitting in presence in a boardroom, and actually, you know, people have a fear of public speaking, you know, just that will put people off. But suddenly in crypto, you're with your computer, you're empowered, you've got all the tools there, you can put in all the time and effort, and maybe this is where we're going to get more of the gender balance coming through. And certainly in decentralized financial services, I think this is really exciting because everything's accessible, not from scary computers and you have to be, you know, now we have incredible technology where everything's on your smartphone with, you know, brilliant apps like crypto.com that make things so easy. And I think that's going to also encourage more women to just come in and play around, because we're making the user experience easy for men and for women. So I'm really excited about that side of crypto and what it could open up without us probably realizing it. But we should do some studies on this.
I mean, I would love to, I mean, I love the enthusiasm, and we can't be negative, but, you know, I still think, and it's a really good point you made, Lucy, about your school. So, and Felicia mentioned it earlier about the societal impact and going back. So I think there's a lot that needs to be done from the ground up. I think that makes a big difference. So I think that is true, but I think it's got to be done at every level. And I would say that I think you know, I can't imagine that crypto isn't worse than what my developer world is. So, you know, and I think I'm speaking from a little bit of authority because my husband mines crypto as a hobby. So I actually have a crypto farm in our basement where he mines 5 different crypto coins every night for fun. And you know, so you know, I'm not trying to be difficult, but I look at his world. There isn't one girl mining cryptocurrency for fun. And you know, and I put my hand up. I'm not mining
because they're smart. It's mining it in your basement. It's not very profitable anymore. So
well, actually, he's managed to.
I think it's actually a good thing. That makes me.
He's managed to get 3 bitcoins. You know, so I don't think we should knock him, right? So you know, over the past couple of years, he now owns 3 bitcoins, which he mines other coins and then trades them on the currency for bitcoins. So he doesn't mine bitcoins. So he mines all these other coins and then trades them for Bitcoin. So I don't think we should knock him, right? He's got 3 Bitcoins, right? So, you know, for fun, you know, so anyway, but, you know, it's not so much because of the app, it's the building the server from scratch and it's making it do what it does. You know, that's what he loves. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, whereas, you know, I'm going to put my hand up here and say my hobby is, you know, riding my horse. And so I go right back to, you know, where, you know, the way we're wired. And I think we've still got to understand that, you know, there's a lot more, you know, Teana, to your point, and research that needs to be done. The carpet one is brilliant, right? So there's a lot more work that has to be done to understand what is the carpet in the other areas that's perhaps, you know, meaning that it is, you know, a bunch of boys enjoying, you know, basements and they're building cryptocurrency, you know, servers. Do you see what I mean? It's like there is a lot of work that has to be done in that. I think Lucy, you know, touched on it a little bit with where we start, you know, genuinely at 5 years of age, and probably even earlier, to be fair. But I can't influence that right this second. Although I do my bit with all my nieces and nephews and things, you know, and get to spare when my friends, you know, obviously will buy the girls' pink outfits and the boys' blue outfits. You know, and a blue scooter and a pink scooter. I'm just like, oh. But anyway, don't get me started on that. But I think what we've got to do in our businesses is to try and knock that unconscious bias on the head, and also, for example, have, you know, so I don't let my team employ anyone without having at least a balanced recruitment list, and it takes them a lot longer as a result. Back to your point, because the women don't put themselves forward. We've got a bank of men wanting jobs in Moneyhub. Oh, you know, banging on the door every day, ringing up, you know, phoning. Do I get women doing that? No. So we have to go looking for them. So that's what I'm saying is, you know, there's lots of things going on. It's not easy.
I think what we've discovered through this conversation is that it's not all gray skies. I definitely think that there's opportunity right now to actually make change. Each of us actually in our own respective rights, with all of the touch points that we have in our private lives, in our families, in our corporate worlds, with our teams, and those that we interact with clients, etc. We all have the ability to kind of influence towards change, even if it isn't massive, but it's, I think, also raising an awareness. 2020 has been one of those years where obviously everything has been completely upside down. But if anything, you know, DEI reporting, there was a discussion, a panel, with Refinitiv, and somebody, I think it was from PwC, he had mentioned that there's no shame in admitting to maybe the numbers not being where they need to be. And I think a lot of companies to bring themselves up to that point where they're conscious of where they stand on the topics of diversity, and then understanding what are the actual steps, what are the steps forward that we need to take, in making sure that things are more representative across the board with regards to gender, with regards to race, etc. So I definitely think we have a road ahead of us, definitely, but the fact alone that we're having this discussion today here during Virtual Vision Finance in 2020, wrapping up the year, it indicates that it's definitely discussion that's happening, and among, you know, top companies across the world. So it's really been a pleasure, and I'm really, really grateful for all of your time. I know that you're all very busy ladies. Hopefully it's not the last, definitely. Yeah. But you've all provided, I think, our audience with some very valuable insights moving forward.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thank you, Sarah.
And what a pleasure to be on such an amazing panel. I mean, it doesn't often happen. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.